My friends, let me begin with a question that pierces deeper than laughter and goes beyond casual conversation. What does it truly mean when a man walks alone, with no girlfriend, no romantic hand to hold, no one to text him late at night? Some may mock him, others may pity him, but I tell you today, he is not empty and he is not forgotten. The world may measure a man's worth by his relationships, by the number of likes on his pictures, by who walks beside him. But heaven measures a man by the strength of his character, by the purity of his heart, and by the vision he carries within. A man without a girlfriend is not a man without value. He may not have a companion at his side, but he can still walk with purpose, with dignity, and with hope. Loneliness does not define him, it refines him. It carves out space within him for something greater than temporary affection. It prepares him for destiny. Too many men believe that without a woman's validation, they are incomplete. But my friends, the truth is this: completeness does not come from another person. It comes from knowing who you are and why you were created. There are men right now who live in frustration, feeling left behind as their friends post photos of engagements, anniversaries, and romantic vacations. And yet, while they envy the surface joys of others, they miss the sacred opportunity of this season, the time to build, to grow, to discipline the mind, to strengthen the spirit, and to discover the calling that only they can fulfill. The absence of a girlfriend is not a curse. It can be a classroom where a man learns resilience, patience, and faith. The danger of desperation is real. When a man becomes desperate to escape loneliness, he will settle for anything, and in doing so, he risks losing himself. But when a man learns to stand tall in his singleness, when he learns his worth is not diminished by waiting, he becomes unshakable. He becomes the kind of man who, when the right person does arrive, brings strength instead of weakness, brings clarity instead of confusion, and brings stability instead of chaos. So, to the man with no girlfriend, hear me today: you are not less. You are not forgotten. You are not falling behind. You are in the middle of a season where the foundation of your future is being laid. Do not despise it. Embrace it. For the greatest stories are often written in the quietest chapters, and the greatest men are often forged in the fires of solitude. A man's worth is not defined by having a girlfriend. This is a truth the world does not often speak of, because society is loud in its mockery, quick in its judgments, and cruel in its comparisons. From the earliest days of boyhood, men are conditioned to believe that their validation comes from external approval, whether it is the applause of the crowd, the nod of peers, or the affection of a woman. Culture whispers and shouts that if a man has no girlfriend, something must be wrong with him. They ask questions with raised eyebrows, they make jokes at his expense, and they reduce his identity to his relationship status. But my friends, let me tell you, a man's worth is not tied to who walks beside him. It is rooted in who he is when he stands alone. A man without a girlfriend is not a man without value. Too often, people confuse absence with deficiency. If he has no one to hold hands with, no one to take out to dinner, no one to post about on social media, they assume he is incomplete. But in reality, he may be standing taller than those who boast of companionship, because his strength is not borrowed, his joy is not dependent, and his confidence is not tied to someone else's presence. His identity rests in something deeper, something unshakable. True worth is not measured by fleeting emotions or temporary bonds. True worth comes from within, from the depth of character, the purity of integrity, and the conviction of purpose. When a man understands that his dignity is not for sale, not negotiable, and not diminished by singleness, he steps into a freedom that few ever taste. He no longer lives at the mercy of others' opinions. He does not need a woman to validate his manhood. He does not need romantic attachment to prove he is complete. He knows who he is, and he walks with the quiet assurance that his value is not up for debate. This kind of man cannot be shaken when others mock him, nor can he be swayed by the pressures of culture, because he knows that true worth was never dependent on someone else's approval in the first place. But the tragedy of our time is that countless men cannot see this truth. They are convinced that without a girlfriend, they are lacking, unworthy, or behind in life. They scroll through endless images online, engagement rings, anniversaries, smiling couples on vacations, and they think they are missing out. They compare their lives to a highlight reel that was never real to begin with. And in that comparison, their sense of worth begins to crumble. They believe the lie that unless someone else loves them, they are not lovable. Unless someone else chooses them, they are not chosen. Unless someone else validates them, they have no value. This lie is powerful, but it is also poisonous because it robs a man of his God-given dignity and blinds him to the greatness within him. A man's worth is not tied to romance. It is tied to responsibility. It is tied to the courage to stand for what is right, to lead when no one follows, to sacrifice when no one sees, and to remain steadfast when others drift away. When we measure a man by his relationships, we miss the essence of manhood. For true manhood is not about conquest or companionship alone. It is about character. It is about being a builder of life, a defender of truth, a pursuer of purpose. A man who has no girlfriend but has discipline, vision, and faith is far richer than the man who has romance but lacks backbone. This season of singleness is not a sentence. It is a sanctuary. It is a time when a man can learn who he truly is without the noise of distraction. He can cultivate his gifts, sharpen his mind, strengthen his body, and anchor his spirit. And when he learns that his worth is not defined by another's attention, he becomes unshakable. He becomes the kind of man who is not desperate, not needy, not easily swayed because his identity is secure. Such a man is dangerous in the best way, dangerous to mediocrity, dangerous to doubt, dangerous to fear. For when the world tells him he is nothing without a girlfriend, he stands and declares that his worth is eternal, unchanging, and beyond measure. We must remind men everywhere that they are not defined by who loves them romantically, but by how they love themselves enough to grow, to wait, to fight for their future. A man's worth is not in the hand he holds, but in the legacy he builds. Some of the greatest men in history walked alone for years before they were known, before they were admired, before they were loved. Their solitude did not diminish them, it prepared them. They were not empty men, they were men in the making. And so, when people look at a man with no girlfriend and think he is lacking, let them look again. For he may be standing taller, walking straighter, and living freer than the man who is chained to relationships that weaken rather than strengthen him. His worth is not negotiable. It cannot be increased by being chosen, and it cannot be decreased by being overlooked. He is enough as he is, for worth is not borrowed. It is already within him. Loneliness can refine, not destroy. This is a truth many resist because loneliness feels like emptiness, like silence that cuts too deep, like an ache that has no name. For many men, being alone without a girlfriend feels like a prison sentence, like a mark of failure, as though they are standing outside the circle while everyone else has been invited in. The world has painted loneliness as weakness, as something to be ashamed of. But what if loneliness is not the breaking of a man, but the making of him? What if solitude is not punishment, but preparation? What if the very thing you fear, those nights without companionship, those days without someone by your side, are the tools shaping you into the man you were meant to become? Loneliness does not have to destroy. It becomes destructive only when it is misunderstood, only when a man uses it as an excuse to believe he is forgotten or unworthy. But when embraced with faith and perspective, loneliness becomes refinement. Think of fire. It can consume or it can purify. Left uncontrolled, it burns everything to ash. But in the hand of a skilled refiner, fire is the tool that removes impurities, leaving behind only gold. Loneliness is like that fire. It burns away illusions. It strips away dependence on shallow attachments. It forces a man to face himself, to look in the mirror without distraction, and to confront the truth of who he is when no one is there to applaud him, to affirm him, or to fill his emptiness. That confrontation, though painful, is the place where growth begins. Too many men run from loneliness. They drown it in noise, in entertainment, in endless scrolling through the lives of others, in shallow relationships that numb the ache but never heal it. They fear silence because silence speaks truth. But the man who has the courage to sit in the silence, to endure the loneliness, and to learn from it becomes a different kind of man. He learns resilience. He learns patience. He learns that he is not defined by constant companionship, but by the strength he builds in solitude. He discovers that he is capable of more than he thought, and that he can walk forward even when no one walks beside him. Loneliness refines because it teaches dependence on what is eternal rather than what is temporary. A man who always has someone by his side may never learn to stand on his own. But a man who has walked through seasons of solitude knows how to stand even when the ground shakes, because he has been tested by the fire of isolation. He has learned to draw strength from within, to sharpen his mind, to build his discipline, to deepen his faith. And when the time comes that companionship enters his life, he does not cling to it out of desperation. He does not idolize it as his source of worth. Instead, he enters with wholeness, bringing strength rather than weakness, stability rather than insecurity. Refinement through loneliness also creates vision. A distracted man cannot see clearly. His days are filled with the noise of others' expectations, the pull of constant conversation, the weight of pleasing someone else. But the man in solitude can hear what others cannot. He can hear the whisper of destiny, the call of his purpose, the voice of wisdom. Great inventions, great books, great ideas, and great breakthroughs have been born in silence and solitude in seasons of loneliness. The world may look at a man with no girlfriend and call him alone, but heaven may look at him and call him ready to dream, ready to build, ready to walk a path that cannot be walked by the crowd. But let us not pretend loneliness is easy. It is not. It cuts deep because man was designed for connection. It aches because the heart was made for companionship. Yet, in the very ache of loneliness lies its power to refine. It forces the question, will you let this pain harden you or shape you? Will you let it destroy you or develop you? The man who lets loneliness break him will sink into bitterness, into cynicism, into desperation that pushes him toward relationships that rob him of dignity. But the man who lets loneliness refine him rises stronger, wiser, and more prepared than before. He uses this season to sharpen his tools, to build his foundation, to strengthen his faith, so that when life's storms come, he is not easily broken. Some of the greatest leaders, prophets, and visionaries in history were forged in solitude. They were misunderstood, overlooked, and often left alone. But it was in their loneliness that they discovered their calling. It was in their solitude that they became unshakable. Loneliness was not their destruction, it was their preparation for influence. In the same way, a man today who feels the sting of being without companionship can choose to see it as wasted time, or he can choose to see it as sacred time. He can choose to waste it in longing, or he can choose to invest it in becoming. He can choose to complain about what he lacks, or he can choose to build what he needs for the future. The truth is, loneliness is a teacher. It teaches lessons no crowd can teach. It shows a man who he is when no one is watching. It forces him to answer the question, if no one loves me today, do I still believe I am worthy? If no one applauds me, do I still believe I have value? If no one walks beside me, can I still walk tall? The man who learns to answer yes to these questions becomes refined, not destroyed. He becomes a man who cannot be shaken by rejection, cannot be crushed by disappointment, and cannot be defined by the presence or absence of others. He has been through the fire, and he has come out gold. Singleness is a sacred opportunity, though the world often fails to see it that way. Many people treat singleness as if it is a disease that must be cured, as if being alone is proof of deficiency, as if waiting is a shameful thing. But the truth is far greater. Singleness is not wasted time. It is not a gap between real chapters of life. It is a chapter in itself, one filled with lessons, with blessings, with growth that no other season can offer. The man who understands this does not treat his singleness as a curse to escape, but as a sacred space to cultivate strength, wisdom, and vision. This is the time when distractions are fewer, when your mind is freer, when your energy can be directed toward building a foundation that will carry you for the rest of your life. Singleness is the classroom where you learn who you are without someone else defining you. It is the training ground where you prepare yourself for battles that will come, responsibilities you will carry, and opportunities that will demand all that you are. The man who wastes his singleness chasing after fleeting pleasures, jumping from one empty attachment to another, will find himself weak when true challenges arrive. But the man who embraces singleness as a gift will emerge stronger, wiser, and more prepared than his peers. Too often, people look at the single man and think he is behind. They pity him or tease him, not realizing that his season is one of divine preparation. While others are distracted by drama and tangled in relationships that drain rather than strengthen them, he is free to sharpen his mind, to discipline his habits, to build his vision, and to align himself with his calling. He is not running late, he is running wisely. He is not being deprived, he is being prepared. Singleness is not a punishment, but a privilege, a sacred time that will never come again in quite the same way. The sacredness of this opportunity lies in what you choose to do with it. A man who uses this time to invest in himself, to grow spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and even financially, lays a foundation that nothing can take from him. He is not rushing to impress someone else. He is building himself into a man of value. He knows that when the time comes and companionship enters his life, He will not be half a man looking for completion, but a whole man offering strength. Too many rush into relationships trying to fill a void, and in doing so, they carry their emptiness into the lives of others. But the man who uses singleness wisely arrives with fullness, with clarity, with stability that blesses instead of burdens. In singleness, you learn self-control. You learn patience. You learn to discipline your desires rather than let your desires control you. You learn to say no to the easy path so you can say yes to the greater calling. These are lessons that are hard to learn when your time and energy are consumed by constant demands of another person. But in solitude, you have the chance to master yourself. And a man who has mastered himself is a man who cannot easily be mastered by life's storms. This season also allows a man to listen more deeply. The world is full of noise, and relationships often add to that noise. But in singleness, you can hear more clearly. You can hear the quiet whisper of purpose. You can pay attention to the desires planted deep within your soul, the ones that call you to something greater than comfort or companionship. You can cultivate vision without compromise. You can plan boldly, dream freely, and act decisively without the fear of disappointing someone else. This clarity of focus is a sacred gift, and it is only found in seasons when the heart is unentangled. There is also power in learning to enjoy your own company. Many men cannot sit alone with themselves without growing restless, without seeking distraction, without running from the silence. But the man who learns to be content in his own presence finds a strength many never discover. He is not afraid of quiet nights. He is not unsettled by solitude. He does not need constant affirmation to feel secure. He has learned that joy is not always found in company, but in peace, in growth, in knowing he is walking in alignment with his purpose. That kind of man, when he eventually steps into companionship, will bring contentment rather than clinginess, strength rather than desperation, love rather than neediness. Singleness is sacred because it also tests your faith. It forces you to trust that you are not forgotten, that your time is not wasted, that your story is not incomplete simply because someone else has not entered it yet. It challenges you to believe that the author of your life knows what he is doing. This faith is not developed in abundance but in absence, not in fullness but in longing. It is in the waiting that patience is born, and it is in patience that true maturity is forged. A man who learns to wait well in singleness becomes a man who can endure well in every other area of life. Too many men squander this season bitter that they are alone, jealous of others, restless for what they think they lack. But those who see with the eyes of wisdom realize that they are in a season many would envy. They have freedom to pursue goals, to travel, to build, to grow in ways that may be harder later. They have the sacred chance to put down roots so deep that when storms come, they will not be shaken. They have time to shape their identity, to clarify their vision, to strengthen their faith so that when life demands greatness of them, they are ready to give it. So do not despise singleness. Do not treat it as wasted time or as proof of failure. It is an opportunity unlike any other, a sacred season that can set the course of the rest of your life. The man who sees this and embraces it will not look back with regret, but with gratitude, knowing that in this season of aloneness, he was not abandoned, he was being prepared. Desperation leads to downfall. It is one of the most dangerous traps a man can fall into, and yet it is one of the easiest snares to overlook. Desperation whispers in quiet moments when the loneliness bites a little too hard, when the silence feels unbearable, when the mind starts convincing itself that anything, absolutely anything, is better than being alone. It pushes men into decisions that look like relief but end in regret. It is the force that takes strong men and makes them weak, that blinds the eyes, that clouds the mind, that convinces a man to settle for less than he is worth and to compromise who he is meant to be. And the tragedy is that desperation never satisfies. It promises fulfillment, but it delivers emptiness. It promises love, but it delivers chains. It promises escape, but it delivers captivity. When a man allows desperation to rule him, he loses sight of who he is. He begins to think that having someone, anyone, is better than waiting for the right one. He lowers his standards. He sacrifices his values. He overlooks the red flags, and he tells himself that this temporary comfort is worth the long-term cost. But what he does not realize is that desperation always demands payment, and that payment is always higher than he expects. The desperate man binds himself to relationships that drain his energy, steal his peace, and erode his identity. He becomes a shell of the man he was meant to be because he allowed the fear of loneliness to dictate his choices. Desperation is dangerous because it does not announce itself as desperation. It often disguises itself as love, as passion, as urgency. It tells a man, if you don't grab this chance now, you will be left behind. It tells him, if you don't take this woman, you'll never find another. It whispers, you're not complete unless you are chosen by someone else. And in believing these lies, a man hands over his dignity, his self-respect, his discernment. He begins to pursue people not because they are right for him, but because he is terrified of being without them. He chases what looks like comfort, but is really captivity. The tragedy of desperation is that it blinds men to the truth. Loneliness is temporary, but the wrong relationship can scar for a lifetime. Many men who rushed into relationships out of desperation now carry the weight of regret, wishing they had waited, wishing they had been strong enough to endure the silence, wishing they had trusted that their worth was not defined by whether or not someone else wanted them. They thought they were escaping loneliness, but what they stepped into was bondage. They thought they were finding love, but what they embraced was a counterfeit. Desperation never leads upward. It always drags a man downward. But the man who resists desperation becomes powerful. He may feel the same loneliness, the same longing, the same ache, but he chooses patience over panic, wisdom over impulse, strength over weakness. He refuses to settle for less than what aligns with his values and his vision. He knows that waiting is not weakness, that silence is not punishment, that solitude is not failure. He knows that if he gives in to desperation, he will destroy the very future he was meant to build. So he stands firm, even when the nights are long, even when the pressure is heavy, even when others mock him for being alone. That kind of man becomes unshakable. Desperation destroys because it robs a man of his sense of worth. A desperate man begins to believe he is lucky just to be chosen by someone, rather than realizing that he is valuable whether chosen or not. He forgets that love should be mutual, that respect should be equal, that partnership should lift him higher. Instead, he convinces himself that he should be grateful for any attention at all, even if that attention comes with disrespect, manipulation, or betrayal. Desperation blinds him to his own dignity. It makes him accept crumbs when he was meant to feast. It makes him bow when he was meant to stand tall. The truth is that no man ever rises out of desperation. He only falls. To act out of desperation is to act out of fear, and fear never builds, it only destroys. Fear makes men cling to what they should release. Fear makes men chase what they should avoid. Fear makes men settle for what they should rise above. And yet, when a man chooses faith over fear, patience over panic, he steps into strength. He learns to trust that the silence of today is not the end of his story, but the soil in which tomorrow's blessings are planted. He learns that his worth is not up for negotiation, and that his life is too valuable to waste on relationships born out of panic. A desperate man cannot lead, cannot inspire, cannot build. His energy is consumed with insecurity. His choices are driven by fear. His vision is clouded by the need for validation. But a man who resists desperation is free. He can see clearly. He can plan boldly. He can love without chains because he is not giving out of neediness but out of fullness. He can wait for the right relationship because he knows that the wrong one will cost him more than loneliness ever could. He can walk with confidence because he knows his value is unshaken even when he walks alone. The danger of desperation is real, but the power of patience is greater. When a man understands that waiting does not diminish him, that being alone does not define him, that his worth is unshakable whether or not he is chosen, then desperation loses its grip. He no longer fears being overlooked because he knows he cannot be overlooked by destiny. He no longer fears being alone because he knows solitude is not the enemy but the ally of growth. And when he finally does step into a relationship, it will not be because he was desperate. It will be because he was ready. Standing strong in solitude builds greatness, though at first it may not feel like greatness at all. At first, it feels like silence, like emptiness, like being forgotten. At first, it feels like a weight pressing down on your chest when you watch others walk hand in hand while you walk alone. At first, it feels like a weakness, like something is missing, like something is wrong with you. But with time, with wisdom, with faith, solitude reveals itself to be one of the most powerful forces in shaping a man. Solitude is not the absence of life. It is the soil of life. It is the hidden place where character is forged, where vision is clarified, where strength is built, and where true greatness begins. A man who has never stood alone will always be dependent. He will always need the approval of others, always need someone by his side to feel strong, always need the validation of another to feel worthy. But a man who has endured solitude, who has faced his fears in silence, who has learned to walk without applause and without company, that man becomes unshakable. He knows how to carry himself when no one else carries him. He knows how to keep moving when no one else is cheering him on. He knows how to believe in his worth even when no one else affirms it. That kind of strength cannot be taught in crowds. It can only be forged in solitude. History is full of examples of men who were forced into solitude before they rose into greatness. Their journeys were marked by long nights of waiting, by years of obscurity, by seasons of being overlooked. But it was in those seasons that they learned to depend on something greater than the opinions of people. It was in those lonely moments that they discovered their resilience, their courage, their unwavering conviction. Greatness is never built in comfort. It is built in the quiet, unseen battles of solitude. It is built when no one is watching, when no one is applauding, when no one is walking beside you. Standing strong in solitude also develops clarity. When you are constantly surrounded by people, their voices drown out your own. Their expectations pull you in every direction, their opinions cloud your judgment, and their presence fills the silence that was meant to reveal your purpose. But when you are alone, you can hear more clearly. You can hear your thoughts. You can hear your heart. You can hear the whispers of destiny calling you to something greater. Solitude strips away the noise so you can see who you really are and what you were really meant to do. That clarity becomes the compass that guides you into greatness. The danger, however, is that many men run from solitude. They cannot stand the silence, so they fill it with distractions, with meaningless pursuits, with shallow connections. They confuse constant company with true strength, not realizing that true strength is proven when you can stand without company at all. The man who avoids solitude will always be fragile because he has never faced himself. But the man who embraces solitude, who learns to stand strong in it, becomes a man of depth, a man of vision, a man who cannot be broken by loneliness because he has already turned loneliness into a weapon of growth. Standing strong in solitude also teaches patience. In a world that screams for instant gratification, solitude teaches waiting. It teaches that not everything comes on your timeline. It teaches you to trust the process, to believe that silence does not mean abandonment, that waiting does not mean wasting. A man who has learned patience in solitude is a man who will not be destroyed by delay, who will not collapse when things take longer than expected, who will not give up when the journey feels slow. Instead, he keeps building, keeps believing, keeps preparing, because he knows that greatness is not microwave, it is forged over time. There is also something sacred about discovering your own company. When you can enjoy your own presence, you are never truly alone. You learn to find joy not in constant chatter, but in quiet growth. You learn to find strength not in others' affirmation, but in your own progress. You learn to find peace not in constant activity, but in the assurance that you are exactly where you need to be in this season. That kind of self-contentment is rare, but it is powerful. It produces men who do not cling to relationships out of neediness, who do not beg for attention, who do not compromise their values just to avoid being alone. Instead, they enter relationships from a place of fullness, bringing peace instead of chaos, bringing stability instead of desperation. Greatness is not built when the crowd is cheering. Greatness is built in the moments no one sees, when you choose discipline over distraction, when you choose faith over fear, when you choose to keep standing even when no one else stands with you. Those choices made in solitude are what separate ordinary men from extraordinary men. Because when the day comes that the world finally sees you, they will see the fruit of what you built in private. They will see the strength you forged in silence. They will see the clarity you cultivated in waiting. They will see the greatness that was born in solitude. So standing strong in solitude is not weakness. It is power. It is the sign of a man who refuses to be defined by others, a man who has built his foundation deep, a man who can weather storms without crumbling. It is the mark of a man who understands that solitude is not punishment but preparation, not emptiness but opportunity. The man who learns to stand strong in solitude does not emerge bitter. He emerges better. He does not emerge weaker. He emerges stronger. And when the time comes for him to walk with others, he will not walk in desperation but in dignity, not in fear but in freedom, not in weakness but in greatness. My friends, hear me one last time. A man with no girlfriend is not a man without worth, not a man forgotten, not a man behind. He is in a sacred season that the world may mock, but heaven honors. It is in this place of solitude that character is forged, patience is born, vision is sharpened, and greatness is built. The absence of companionship is not the absence of value. It is the proving ground where a man learns to stand on his own, where he learns to silence the lies of desperation, where he learns to see singleness not as a curse but as a gift of preparation. So let no man hang his head in shame because he walks alone today. Let no man believe the lie that he is incomplete without the hand of another. For the truth is this: if he can stand strong in the quiet, he will stand stronger in the storm. If he can be faithful in the waiting, he will be fruitful in the receiving. And if he can embrace this season with courage, he will rise from it not broken, but unshakable. A man with no girlfriend is not less of a man. He may be the very man destiny is waiting for, the man who will walk into his calling refined, prepared, and unstoppable. Let him walk tall. Let him embrace the silence. Let him honor the season. For this is not the end of his story. It is the beginning of his greatness.